It says is, if we only have a limited amount of money for public infrastructure, can we continue to spend it to the people who are first at the trough, putting sewer lines into greenfields, so that there's no money left to do any of the good, necessary, synergistic, positive, long-term things that people want to see happen? Like maybe a train line from Saratoga to Schenectady and Albany, or bus rapid transit, or you name all the good, smart, growthy things like complete streets and walkable, livable communities. So what this bill does is say to all these agencies that got the money, it's much harder now for you to spend money on sprawl and waste it, diffuse the limited money we have in decisions that spread infrastructure over the countryside when we don't have the money to fix what we have. And so that's a bill that actually was passed this year, passed on June 18th. We sweated out the summer because the governor signed it on August 30th, went into law September 30th, and the agencies are being told what to do about it now. But again, the key thing is, if you have limited money for public infrastructure, you've got to use your money wisely, and the core of these smart growth principles is invest in the future where you already have an investment in public infrastructure, like a place like Saratoga Springs, your Main Street, the streets that surround us right now. It's a start. It's not the only thing we support. There are a bunch of other bills we would have liked to see passed this year that didn't get passed. We worked very hard on the Complete Streets bill, which got stuck on a technicality, actually one individual's objection in the assembly, and we're hoping to turn that around next year. There's something called Land Banking Authority that would allow places like Buffalo and Rochester and Syracuse that have lots of abandoned and vacant land. And again, you're talking about just half a mile from the heart of Buffalo. You can just look and it's like, just where is a building? It's hard to believe. Can take control of their land through the land banking process so that it doesn't go on the speculator market where they can never again make wise decisions about their own land use within the city. Complete Streets, land banking, something called tax increment financing. There are other bills we also have, the High-Speed Rail Authority, there are other bills we support and want to see moved along. But the infrastructure bill is one we focused on very hard last year and managed to pass and got bipartisan support on it. And I'll tell you why I think it happened. When New York got all that, I call it stimulus, I know it has a longer ARRA name. We got $4 billion of new infrastructure money. They got $100 billion of shovel-ready proposals sent into the Patterson administration, $100 billion from around the state. There are $32 billion of unrepaired or broken sewage lines and sewage treatment plants around the state. Now, when a sewer line goes, that's about the worst thing that can happen to a municipality. It's even worse than water main breaks. And if a sewage treatment plant goes, it goes right into the waters you love. Recreation that's now possible in our rivers and lakes and so on, you don't want your sewage treatment plants to fail. $32 billion of broken sewage line, sewage treatment plants in New York State. Where are we going to get the money to do this if we keep adding new sewer lines out in the greenfields? So at what point do we say, enough of the sprawl, enough of the hollowing out cities, let's use our money wisely? So that's sort of what we focused on statewide. That's sort of the way we think about the problem overall. But again, the problem is different in each of the regions of New York. The solutions for New York City, which has added 1 million in the last 20 years, to add another 1 million people, you look around there, where are they going to put them? It's really intensive applications of infrastructure that won't be easy. They're going to have to build higher. They're going to have to find every little bit of brownfield, fix it, and build there. They're going to have to add schools. They're going to have to add transit capacity. They're going to have to add water. All the things, I mean, they have the water and sewer, but they're going to have to make sure they have the capacity of the plants. A very heavy dose of infrastructure. For places of Putnam, Orange, Dutchess, the fast-growing places, okay, there's going to be some new money because it's growing, but you can make the really wrong decisions while you're growing, because you do the expedient thing. And then a few years later, you go, where'd our quality of life go? We're all sitting in congestion because we didn't invest in the right things. And so what we try to do is have the most intelligent possible discussion with the legislative leadership, with the governor's people, and with the people of the state of New York about why land use and development decision-making is important, while infrastructure, as boring as the word sounds, as boring as the implications, as uncomfortable people are about the word sewer, really determine our quality of life, our standard of living in New York. And I don't know if you're in a bubble here in Saratoga Springs. I don't know if you'll be the beneficiary of a lot of this, but watch out. Growth has its challenges too. You know about that. And so I'd like to hear a little bit, maybe if somebody wants to say what the challenges here are, I'll just listen as the evening goes on. But because I don't spend my time that much in places that are growing in New York. The other places growing upstate are really small, skinny alleys, on the lake in central New York. I mean, Clarence and outside Buffalo. It's like in each region, there's like one town. And I almost call them like Ark communities, like Noah's Ark, where everybody goes to be safe when the flood comes. I don't know if that's a good business model for the state, because there are not a lot of places like that, and people figure it out. Prices are going to go so high. I haven't thought through the implications of all. You're living with it, so I'll be interested in your thoughts. But other questions on what we're trying to do, or what we're about, and what smart growth is? Did I go too fast?
To the bill you're so proud of on the bipartisan support to state infrastructure and smart growth. There's some of us that are as equally concerned as you are that are a bit nervous over that because it's an assumption that state offices in a core downtown area of an urban city are automatically a good thing. I do some work with the DLC down in Washington, and we've just addressed that, and we're not sure if that's your assumption that we agree with it. We looked at a town like Albany. We're not necessarily sure that putting DEC and the new state controller's building downtown necessarily is a good thing for Albany. And I'm wondering if you might comment on that.
Sure. I mean, I wouldn't say that either I or smart growth in general says putting a government office building on this block and this location is a good idea. I think local land use decisions are still necessary and required.
Our concern is that the bill you referred to encourages that kind of thing from happening.
Well, it does. It is saying that it is better in general to put new facilities where you already have infrastructure and infill needs and public investment than put it out in a greenfield where you're going to induce VMT, where you're going to disturb habitat, disturb species, and wreck the possibility of transit because of greater density in other places.
We agree with that, but we don't think it's such a black and white decision. We'll look at Albany again. That there's something in between. Like we would argue, when we're arguing locally, that the next state office building shouldn't be downtown Albany. It should probably be back at the Harrison campus because the real estate in Albany should be private sector.
I wouldn't, I mean, I'd like to hear the city of Albany discuss that, but I wouldn't necessarily disagree. First of all, Harriman is in the city of Albany.
Right.
It's underused. There's a public investment in infrastructure. And there might well be better things you could do with downtown Albany. And I'd like to have that discussion. It's funny, I was just coming down, whichever the street is that aims straight at the DEC building, and I was thinking, I think it's Clinton Street, which goes through Arbor Hill. I was thinking, they lost their view of the river and the Rensselaer, to the side of the river and the trees. And so I was thinking, well, maybe that's a loss. And I wasn't there at the time of the decision. I don't know the decision process. But we're not black and white about what should be done. It was still a home rule state. And communities are going to make those kind of decisions. Now, I know when the state does things, they can override local and blah, 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 particularly if that's Empire State Development Corp doing it. But we still respect home rule. And we're not going to get in and say, your city, you should do this. We do believe in these general principles. And again, going to Harriman would have been fine, would be fine with me, under most circumstances. Other?
Actually, I work for an aging place down in Albany, North, and that's part of this naturally occurring retirement community, which they're popping up all over the state. They used to just be in the city, but it dovetails very closely with smart growth, and it gives communities the opportunity because the fastest growing population are the seniors. And I believe they're going to be a third of the population in the next 5 to 10 years because the baby boomers are all aging. So if your communities, I believe Buffalo is now really catering and trying to keep their senior population living in where they are versus moving out of the state. So I know that communities, if they start planning, which works with your livable community, your walkability, all of that, if they plan for this population to try to allow the people to stay at home and stay in place in their communities, it will help some of this.
We were very pleased to start partnering with AARP because New York is an aging state. It's not just that it's aging, the baby boom's aging everywhere. But 20 to 40 somethings have been leaving upstate New York in the droves for 20, 30 years. And so there's a real inverted demographic pyramid in New York. And so if you know, we have a lot of seniors, we're going to have a lot of seniors. We're not going to have a lot of 20, 30, and 40s folks unless we start doing things. So one, we're really looking at those policies which will keep youth here. And one is to have communities that are interesting to them and have a quality of life that younger people want to have. Two, naturally occurring retirement communities. There will be a problem when people in their 70s are living in the suburbs and exurbs. They're going to drive less, they're going to be less comfortable driving, they're not going to be so good with a shovel and snow. They're going to want to come to some place where they don't have to drive as far, can walk more easily, services are readily provided. What we're trying to do is say, let's start making the infrastructure and community development decisions now that will allow for that. So the communities we have starting 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now are the ones we're going to need, and not serving some wish we had back in the 70s that we never fulfilled. That would not be the right use of our money. Did you have a question, sir?
Yeah, what was the bill that you're referring to, the infrastructure bill? I'd like to read more.
It's called the Public Infrastructure Policy Act. And if you go to either assembly.gov or Senate, NYS Senate.gov, you can go Assembly or the Senate websites, and you look up either A8011B, that's the Assembly bill, which is the same as S5560B. So you can probably search it on the name of the bill or by either bill in the Assembly or Senate website, and then you see all the information, who voted for it, and what the words are. It's only about 2.5 printed pages long, but a lot of it is listing all the state agencies that are affected by it. The core of the bill is really short.
Along those lines, about the bill, what I've read is, and you described it briefly, but in terms of the criteria for smart growth, the idea is to get the public agencies to really take a hard look at anything that's being invested with public money and really make sure it's fitting in with that. What kind of communication or feedback is there in terms of their look at it and deeming it, yes, it fits within smart growth? Is there any group or who's actually communicating on this? What's the feedback that will...
Well, there will be these advisory councils that include constituents, environmental groups, people affected by the bill. Advisory. A commissioner will have to put in writing, I looked at that project, tried to get them to go to the Harriman campus, they wouldn't, so we're putting it in this green field. You're going to have to state it in writing. And if a particular agency is making everything an exception and writing very spurious reasons for why they ignore the smart growth criteria, there'll be a written record of it. So you may have some agencies that are trying to make everything they do smart growth, and other agencies are finding every exception. That at least will be public, transparent, documented by law. And that is a good start, because that means a real discussion has started about this stuff. I look at some bills are like a speed bump, it's just inconvenient to go over them. I look at this as like a berm. It's hard to go over, it's hard to get around, you can't ignore it, but it's not a steel trap either, which I think we might regret.
So it sounds like somewhat along the lines of Seeker, for example. It's a tool. Seeker?
It's a little stronger than Seeker.
It's stronger, but in terms of a tool shaping how your decisions being made and giving you things to take a look at.
But it's specific, rather Seeker is a little bit of a reactive thing, initiated by a project initiator. This is every government agency for every infrastructure project has to say, we ran it through the smart growth screen, and this is where we came out. It's a big change, and in fact, it's further along than most states in this country have gone.
So I think we'll have time for questions, open up for questions again, but thank you, Peter. And